carry on trying it. There's no job you can do with it if you want to go doing something now.
Yeah. Did they?
Sunbathe naked on the roof.
Would you sunbathe naked, Dawn? Just
Yeah,
smile.
I might, yeah. No, about it.
For you, you might. For me, you might.
I said, here am I.
Ooh, it's a nice
Nobody's
cheeky
about.
smile. Hello.
It's funny, isn't it?
You are?
Popeye then.
Right. Uh-oh, olive oil.
That's a lovely
There's
guy.
a gap that way.
And discovered that there was an entire herd of sheep on the inside of it. So I guess it does have a slight purpose. But this pyramid is actually strategically located on an elevation in the land, where you can see it from 5 different points on the landscape. If you walk up to the Temple of the Four Winds, you can see the pyramid straight into the distance again. And as you come to the drive, you can see down the distance. And that bridge is right up there. And you see the pyramid standing. It's great. This pyramid is also another one of those visual illusions in the landscape. It looks as if we're standing on quite a... If she marries and remains behind the envelope for 6 months out of the year, I will allow her to go up to the envelope for the other 6 months out of the year and remain with her mother. And so then, from this, we have the explanation of our 4 seasons. We have autumn and winter, when Persephone is in the envelope and the morning is free. This is where I always lose my attention to the fish. I might fight it. Trying to get the fish to do the work. A little bit, yeah. Well, this here is our Atlas fountain. Atlas is one of the titans. Well, Atlas, not Hercules at one time. Hercules, our great hero, committed his sin of hubris against the gods, and he was sentenced to undertake the 12, supposedly impossible feat of 12 labors of Hercules.
Dawn Heavers. Amazingly big horse.
Bollocks. Don't ever says to that.
Oh, God, the sun went out. A total eclipse of the sun. Now my sides really are hurting.
I ain't see that looking through your arse anyway.
cemetery up. And jumping door.
I'm gonna have a drink of pop.
Watch it out falling.
Oh, it's a lovely drink. I bet you wish you'd got some, don't you? I'm so thirsty after coming up that hill.
Spooky wood.
Ryewood it's called.
Ryewood.
Yeah.
Ryewood. And now his sister Emily Wood.
It's under there, do you think? Something taller.
We'll lift it up and say.
Go on there. There.
Yeah.
Orientating.
Yeah.
Promise.
Oh, good. Good at orientating.
I'm better. Yeah, this is the one I'm driving. There's the new bridge. Look. This is the temple of the fallen. Look at it.
I suggested to his lordship that such a building might look just right in his grounds. Paper, ink and quill were sent for, and when the servant brought them to us where we were on the roof watching the sunset, I sketched for his lordship my idea of a temple with a portico each way. His lordship liked the idea greatly, and then forgot about it for 10 years. It wasn't until a couple of summers ago he came to me and said, "Matthew, I must have that temple you spoke of."
Still remember different buildings.
Come on, out the way, Dawn. I want to record the house, not you. Hello, Clarice. Got something out of the electric film, isn't it? Alright. Dawn. You are. Yeah, look. No, no. No, it's about right.
In a few seconds time. Are you all standing comfortably? Yes, and you've got your camera ready. Do you know what's going to happen in a few minutes time?
Might see a ghost.
Who knows? Who knows? The fishermen brave more money have than any merchants 2 or 3. Therefore I will to Scareborough go, that I, a fisherman brave, may be. Now Scareborough has been a fishing port for many centuries, and by the year 1336 there were 10 fishing boats based here, and it is believed that Robin Hood himself worked on board one of those. He went under the name of Simon Wise whilst he lived in the town, and he lodged with a Scarborough widow woman. Now, had any of you come here before the year 1485, had you looked up in the streets and the lanes and the alleyways, you would have seen lines with fish hanging. And do any of you have any idea why you would have seen fish hanging up on lines in the streets and the lanes and the alleyways? Any guesses, anybody?
Because it's a fishing port.
Sorry?
This is a fishing port.
Well, yes, this is a fishing port, but why would we hang fish up?
Because you like to eat fish?
You're local, aren't you? I remember you a few weeks ago being rather noisy and annoying. And if you're noisy and annoying, I will come to where you live in the middle of the night. And you will be there. You will be really scared. I can do a lot with my umbrella. Now, the reason you would have seen fish hanging on lines in the streets and the alleyways was to dry it. Because in the Middle Ages, we had no refrigeration, no freezers, so the main way of preserving fish was by drying it, by hanging it outside on lines in the streets and the lanes and the alleyways. The other way of preserving fish was by salting it. Parents and those of you who are perhaps even older, there were no Walker's crisps, no salted peanuts. So if you went into an inn or a tavern and you bought a pint of lager, or, well, no lager then, but a pint of beer or whatever people drank, the traditional food served would have been a salted herring. Don't know if any of you... Sorry? Unfortunately not, no. No. You like pot scratchings? Yes.
Usually his own.
Sorry? Usually his own. Sounds very interesting. Tell me more. Are you two related by any chance?
Only by marriage.
Only by marriage.
Not to each other.
Sister, brother-in-law. Sorry? Brother, sister, brother-in-law. Right. So they're your two sisters? Right. And where are you all from? Anywhere nice? Scunthorpe. Actually, I heard that your local football team is changing its name. Its new name is going to be Scunthorpe United 0. In fact, so far this season, I already thought the team had changed its name already, because nearly every match it was Scunthorpe United 0. And you're all from Scunthorpe, are you? Right. You're all definitely from Scunthorpe. You're not from Brigg, or
No.
you're not from Winterton or Winteringham, or Normanby, or Burton-on-Stather, or Crowell, or Althorpe. You're definitely from Scunthorpe. Well, somebody has to be. Now, so 1603, a new law passed. And that law stipulated that every public house, every inn and every tavern had to have a bar of salted herrings for customers. Now, in the Victorian period, that was the century of change. And by the year 1880, there were 75 fishing boats based here. And all the Scottish fisher girls came down from Aberdeenshire, from Aberdeen and Fraserburgh, because they were the only people who would work for such poor wages, gutting the fish at the harbour side. And in fact, the Scottish fisher girls the fastest of them could gut 50 fish every minute. 50 a minute. Could any of you imagine that? And in fact, the early tourists in the Victorian period liked nothing better than to go down to the harbour side and watch those poor fisher girls at work gutting the fish. Don't know if any of you fancy that, do you?
Not really, no.
Not really. You are from Scunthorpe too?
Yes,
You don't sound like you are.
but I am.
You are. Right.
She went to school.
You mean they have schools in Scunthorpe?
Only one or two.
Only one or
Yeah.
two. Right. Right. Well, it could be worse.
Yeah.
You could be from Goole or Grimsby.
Possibly, yeah. Well, that's not what it was, yeah.
Sorry? No, everybody in Grimsby sells the fish.
Yeah.
Now, nowadays, two types of fishing boats in the town. There is a keel boat, which fishes by trawler method with a large net catching whitefish like cod and herring and haddock. Another type of fishing boat is a cobble. Has anybody heard of the cobble? No, well, the cobble is based on a Viking longship. And basically, the cobbles have lines 600 feet long, which are laid down to the seabed, and they catch crabs and lobsters. So that's what the cobbles are used for. Has anybody here ever caught crabs before?
No.
No?
No, are you sure?
Well, perhaps you'll have the opportunity whilst in Scarborough.
Yeah, I've heard about Scareborough girls, yeah.
Right.
Oh dear.
Now, you might all be thinking, why have I been talking about fish and the fishing industry on the Haunted Wharf? Well, that's because the lifeboat steps ahead there, haunted by the phantom fisherman. Now, during this tour, there are lots of shocks. Yes, lots and lots of shocks and lots of surprises for every one of you, without fail, especially you. However, there is one thing I cannot guarantee, unfortunately, that any of you will see a real live ghost. However, in a few minutes' time, you will see the next best thing. Now, the lifeboat steps haunted by the phantom fisherman. He apparently appears at 5 o'clock in the morning. He has a long white beard. He wears a very old-fashioned sou'wester. He smokes a clay pipe and is the only phantom in the town known to speak. And he apparently says, "Good morning." And what I'd like to do this evening, here and now, is actually recreate the phantom fisherman of Scarborough. And I need 2 volunteers. A female and a male, preferably friends or relatives or lovers. And we're not going to move until I get 2 volunteers. A female and a male.
Come on, Trace.
So we have 2 volunteers. And your name's Trace.
Tracy.
Tracy. And your name is Daz.
What have we got to do?
Really? It's not Surf or Ariel. Right. Now, Tracy, you can stand next to me.
Thank you.
That's all right. And Daz, you can stand with your back against the wall for the moment. We've got Dale Vinton round the corner, that's why. Now, basically, Tracy, we're going to recreate the phantom fisherman of Scarborough. And we have, I was going to say a very fine specimen, but we have a specimen here, even though it's from Scunthorpe. Now, first of all, the phantom fisherman of Scarborough has a very old-fashioned sou'wester. Unfortunately, I cannot fit one in my bag, but I have the next best thing. If I can find it.
I heard you say that as well, Daz.
Find it.
It's amazing what I've got in my bag.
I heard you say that. We don't want these for
Yeah.
Here we are. Our modern day Tracy. You have to put this on our phantom fisherman. You have to dress tied or persil in our modern day.
Hope it's been washed.
Sorry?
Hope it's been washed.
Of course it hasn't been washed.
Put that on.
No, you don't have to put it on. Tracy's going to put it on you. So go ahead.
Go on then. Get over
How does it work? Oh, that's right.
How does it work? You mean, I thought you still wore them in Scunthorpe.
Adidas.
Sorry?
Is it Adidas?
No, actually, it's SCUK.
Sat in a bowl with his gin trace.
I'm cutting this back.
Well,
Yeah, I've done it.
He's got to
Right.
keep that on all the way through.
No.
No chance. Please tell me.
Can we have a
Now.
copy of that film? Your address.
Yeah, no problem.
Now, everybody, what does every fisherman have?
A rod.
Well, something like that. So, Tracy, we have something that you will need to give to Persil. Something else I can find is I've got so many props in my bag. So many surprises. I've got my what?
Food for the evening, isn't it?
My food for the evening. Yes, raw fish. There we are. A net trap phantom fisherman. And what does every good fisherman have? Every good fisherman has one thing.
Fish.
Fish.
That's right, yes.
Oh, God, don't tell me you've got fish in there. Frank hates
Frank
fish.
takes fish, by the way. Don't go near.
Right.
Tin salad.
Tracy.
Can.
Can, Frank, yeah.
And finally, the phantom fisherman of Scarborough has a long white beard.
Come on,
Who
then.
is that laughing?
Oh dear.
I think she might do what you said, but it's going to be through.
Please don't tell me it's foam.
No chance.
Get it on him, Tracy.
Come on. This is my chance to get back at you, you little shit.
Youngest brother. Youngest of four. You fucking. Excuse my language.
Get it on there, Tracy.
What makes it? Sheep.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Are you local?
I am. There you go. That's it. Oh, a bit more.
Don't forget the
Serves
touch.
you right, you little shit.
Thank you. Right.
I'm not paying you though, you know. I'm working with this.
Is that the thing? It's a mistake, isn't it?
Now, Persil. The phantom fisherman of Scarborough, right, 5 a.m. on a morning, anybody who is here, he apparently says good morning to them. So pretend it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I know you aren't up at that time because you're from Scunthorpe.
He doesn't sleep.
He doesn't sleep.
No,
Is
he's
he a
nocturnal,
vampire?
yeah, he's vampire.
Are you a vampire?
Comes life at night.
Really?
All night, yeah.
Right. Well, pretend it's 5 o'clock in the morning. These good people here from Scunthorpe and from places unknown at this moment in time
Not the same ocean
have
where
come
you're
here.
from, are you? Sorry.
That's because they come from Barton on Humber.
Yeah.
Right.
That is.
Now it's 5 o'clock in the morning, Persil. These people here have come down especially to see you, and they want to be frightened by the phantom fisherman of Scarborough with his traditional fishing regalia. So in your best Scarborough accent, good morning.
What is a Scareborough accent?
Good morning.
Good morning.
You don't have to go right up there, it's
So
okay.
what? To just walk down past you or something? Yeah.
No, you just
Float.
Yeah.
I don't do that sort of thing.
Wrapping your fishing rod with your can of sardines.
Good morning. Was that a Scarborough accent?
I don't know what a Scareborough accent is.
No,
James, if you can't believe it.
no, that wasn't a Scarborough accent.
Are you from
You've
Scarborough?
got a Scarborough accent, haven't you?
No, I haven't.
And where are you from?
Where am I from? What's for me to know?
Yeah. Paul.
Oh.
Oh, how dare you!
To all them back.
Right, your second attempt. Good evening.
Good evening.
Are you local? You are. We've got a gentleman here who was looking for a
Say
local
good
Scareborough
morning.
girl who wants a night of passion. There's one up there with a rainbow. You don't want a night of passion with... he is from Scunthorpe. You've been turned down. You said you wanted to catch crabs, so I thought I'd get you a local lamb. Right, your second attempt at your best Scarborough accent. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, you're getting there. You got north of the Humber. I think that was probably about North Ferriby or Brough or Ellerton or something. So your third and final attempt. Look, we've got Jeremy Beadle around the corner. He's about to come round to film you. So in your best Scarborough accent. Good morning.
Can I do it? Good morning. Do it, your accent.
We'll just do it.
Good morning.
Well, I think that will have to do. I think you deserve a round of applause, actually.
Hey!
Now, there is one thing I didn't mention. The Phantom Fisherman of Scarborough, apparently he runs down there and kisses the first person he sees. Right on the street there.
No, I'm not like that.
I'm only joking, actually. What he normally does, he normally snogs anybody with the hair in bunches wearing little pink. Now, I've got some good news and some bad news. The good news is I've got a towel to clean you up with. The bad news is I've forgotten it. Yes. It's not a rag, it's a tea towel.
Worst places.
Sure
You've been in worse places. Like where? Immingham? Gainsborough?
Could be.
Gainsborough.
Could be.
Just a bit nervous, are we, Percival? Right. If you'd all like to line up against the wall once again, please. Right! I'd like you all to shut your eyes and imagine waking up to find you being buried alive. You're a little bit jumpy. Now, there's only one thing I can think of which is worse than waking up to find you've been buried alive. And that's waking up to find that you've been buried alive with Cilla Black. Now, or even waking up to find you've been buried alive in Scunthorpe. Now, this tale isn't from Scarborough, but it is from a parish not too far away. And I always like to tell it down here. It's normally dark down here, but for some reason, the lights are on this evening, but hopefully they might go out very mysteriously in a few minutes. Hopefully, and we might be left in the pitch black. Now, in Britain, in the last 5 years, there have been 2 recorded cases of people who have been certified dead when they have been alive. Some of you may recall one case, a lady called Margaret, in her late 60s from East Yorkshire. 3 years ago, she was certified dead, and a few hours later, in Bridlington Hospital, somebody noticed that she was breathing, and obviously she had a pulse. Now, if that can happen nowadays, imagine centuries ago, before doctors really knew anything, before we had registration of births and marriages and deaths. And indeed, registration of deaths did not begin until the 1st day of July 1837. So prior to that, if anybody died, their death did not have to be certified by a doctor And it was even very common for people to be buried on the very day they died. Now this tale occurred, or this happening occurred in the year 1810. So 1810, the year this gentleman here was born. Yes.
Very paranoid about days now.
Is it?
Just turned 40, yeah.
Yeah, well,
It could be worse.
it could. I could be born in Scunthorpe.
Yes. But from Manchester.
God's country.
Sorry? Salford. The
God's,
city of Salford.
hey, God's country, mate.
Well, you're not in God's country now. You're in Cod's country. Now, 1810. A funeral took place in the parish church in this parish not too far from here. The funeral was of an elderly female. And at the funeral, the Virgin noticed that the corpse had a very expensive looking ring on her finger. A bit like that. I mean, that's obviously from one of those plastic eggs that you pay 10p for. But it was a very expensive looking ring. Now, this woman whose funeral took place was wealthy. And wealthy people were usually not buried in the graveyards. Does anybody know what happened to them? To the wealthy people? Yes, they were entombed in the vaults deep beneath the church floors. If any of you go in any old church, you look on the walls, you see little markers on the walls and slabs on the floor which tell you the names of the people entombed in crypts beneath the floor. Always wealthy people. They had to pay a lot more for that privilege. Now, this wealthy woman, after the funeral, and in those days often coffins were open at the funeral, the coffin was closed and the coffin placed down in the vault. But the Virgin knew that the vault was not due to be sealed properly until the following day. And he decided to creep back that night and to steal the ring. And that's what he did. He crept back into the church in the middle of the night. He got hold of the hand of the corpse after opening the lid of the coffin. And he tried to pull the ring. And it wouldn't come off. So he pulled, and he tugged, and he tugged, and he pulled. What's you laughing at? Have you been doing lots of tugging and pulling lately? Of course not. Now that's what he did. He did lots of tugging and pulling. But could he get the ring off? No. And what was he to do? He couldn't phone a friend. He couldn't have 50-50. So he decided to creep back, or creep out of the church, get a knife, and creep back and take the whole finger. And that's what he did. He left the church and got a knife, and he came back into church, and he got hold of the finger with the ring on. And we'd like to recreate this evening the Virgin cutting the finger off. Do we have any volunteers? Do we have any volunteers?
This time. It's got a ring on.
Frank and Sharon do it.
You two do it.
You'd be quite happy to have your finger cut off, wouldn't
Do
you?
it, mummy.
Now I haven't got a knife this evening, I've got either a hacksaw or a pair of scissors. What would you prefer?
Scissors are quick.
Yeah.
Scissors. And have we got a volunteer who will cut your finger off?
Frank.
Nah, go on.
And do you promise to me, Mr. Salford, if you get into trouble, that you will tell the police that you took it upon your own shoulders to cut off this young lady's finger without any enticement from myself? Do you promise that?
Aye, go on, then.
You will really do that? And you're quite happy, really, to have your finger cut off? You really are?
He done that.
Strange people from Scunthorpe, aren't they? Actually, I've got you some good news. I've forgotten the knife and the scissors and the hacksaw, but
2 bricks.
no, I've got a nail file. No, but the verger got hold of the finger and started to cut down. And all of a sudden, the corpse opened its eyes, looked down at its hands, seeing a knife stuck through it and blood, and it looked up, saw a strange man peering over it through the darkness, and screamed. So if you could recreate the scream that this lady did in the year 1810, upon coming to in a coffin with her finger half cut off in the crypt of a church. A nice loud scream. Is she good at screaming? Is she a screamer?
She's been known to scream, yeah.
So a nice loud scream, please.
Come on, Chef, let's have it. Just look at Joseph, really, yeah?
You'll do it, won't you, Joseph?
There you go.
Did I hear it said that your name's Shaz? Shaz and Daz?
And Tracy.
And I don't. And you haven't got white stilettos on. You haven't got a white handbag. Well, it's not a single person over there. Yeah, he's probably one of us a handbag. And that's where ladies are in. So, a nice loud scream.
Go on, Sharon.
A proper scream.
I got scared, I can't scream.
Look, pretend you've woken up in the middle of the night and you've got Dad in bed with you. That wasn't too bad. And the verger also screamed very loudly and fled the church and reported and never returned. And you all know, this woman, this was in the year 1810, and although she was highly traumatised, it was recorded in the records of that parish that she lived for another 8 years until she really died in the year 1818. And what's more, in the 1960s, when the vaults of this church were actually cleared away, one stone vault, when it was opened, it was found that the coffin inside was actually open. The lid had been forcibly opened from the inside. There was still a skeleton in there though, because presumably this person had been entombed alive in a coma or whatever. They'd come to, managed to break the lid off the coffin, but presumably their screams for help had gone unheard deep beneath the floor of the church. And in fact, one of the crypts, upon being opened, the coffins inside were all intact, but one coffin, upon being opened, it was found that lots of wood had been scraped away from the seal. There were very dark stains as well around the seal inside the coffin, and when tested it was found as very old blood, and the skeleton's fingers inside were all very badly damaged and broken. All the nails had been ripped off. And that was only in one church. So imagine, in all the churches around the country, how many people have actually been buried alive. Imagine that. So if any of you are planning on dying in the very near future, then perhaps you should put it in your will that you're buried with your mobile phone. And with any luck, you won't be able to get reception. And if you all follow me now, I'm going to take you all around to one of the oldest buildings in the town. Dating from the 13th century, the front features are all Elizabethan. And in fact, until a few weeks ago, in his black metal cage, there was a 400-year-old stone carving of Richard III. And that vanished very mysteriously in the middle of the night. I hope none of you lot were here a few weeks ago. I've heard about people from Scunthorpe. It was believed the value of that would have been between £30,000 and £40,000. Now, you've all heard of Richard III. He was allegedly a hunchback king who murdered his two nephews in the Tower of London in the year 1483. Now, Richard was born at Fotheringay Castle on the 2nd of October 1452. And in the year 1473, he became the Duke of Gloucester. And as Duke of Gloucester, he was based at Middleham Castle in Wensleydale, about 300 miles away from Gloucester, which made complete sense. Now, in the year 1483, Richard's brother died. and his brother had been the reigning king. Now his brother had two sons aged 12 and 10, and the elder son became the new king, Edward V. Now Richard allegedly wanted the throne of England, and he then claimed that his late brother and his wife, Elizabeth Woodville, were not actually married, and therefore the two boys were illegitimate. Subsequently, Edward V was taken from the throne and placed in the Tower of London with his younger brother, the Duke of York. And those two boys were never ever seen alive again. Many rumours circulated suggesting they'd been drowned in a vat of wine, which doesn't sound such a bad death, does it? Other rumours suggested the two boys were perhaps smothered between two feather beds, or even poisoned. But what we do know is that in the year 1674, during some repair work on the tower, the skeletons of two boys were uncovered. At the time they were identified as the two princes in the tower and were then reinterred in Westminster Abbey. Now Richard himself became king in 1483. He reigned only 2 years and died at the Battle of Bosworth in 1485 at the age of 32. And he was the last English king to die in battle. His tomb is actually in Greyfriars Church in Leicester. But in 1484, Richard made Scareborough his base. And he stayed here in this building, the top room. The top room to this day is still known as the King's Bedroom or the Richard III room. And when he stayed in there, he made strategic shipping plans because his fleet of ships, the King's fleet, were actually based here in Scarborough. And in fact, Richard gave the town county status. So had you all been here back then, you would have been in the town and county of Scarborough. Now, Richard still returns to the top room there. During the last century, when it was a bedroom, many people reported seeing his apparition. Other people who didn't see it still reported being awoken in the middle of the night, hearing very strange noises. And nobody, and I repeat, nobody, would ever spend a second night in that room. Now that room today is not a bedroom, it is actually the break room for the staff who work in the cafe. If any of you would like to have the opportunity to see the apparition of Richard III, then apply in writing to the proprietor of this restaurant and coffee shop, £4.10 an hour and morning and afternoon tea break. And just think, when you go for your tea break, top room, what are you laughing at? £4.10 an hour?
Yeah.
I thought that's what he was going to charge us to stay in the room.
I bet people living in Scunthorpe look forward to being able to earn that amount.
It's when you said it too great.
So when you go up there for your break, just think you may well come face to face with Richard III. But I should report that Richard III's apparition is the only apparition in the town that's sighted in more than one location. Now, he was born on the 2nd day of October in the year 1452. And on the 1st day of October in the year 1976, a special banquet was held in the castle to celebrate the anniversary of Richard's birth. Quite why they picked the 524th anniversary of his birth, I don't know. It's not a very significant figure, is it? And what about this gentleman here? Did you celebrate your 524th birthday? No comments. Now, the banquet had a traditional medieval theme. Everybody was in medieval costume. All the food served was on rams of dried bread, which was used in those days. People didn't have plates, so they ate from rams of dried bread. Although I still believe they are used in Scunthorpe, aren't they?
Occasionally, yeah.
Occasionally. Occasionally, so it's 360 days a year. Now, one of the people at the banquet was a young man called Tom King. sorry, I've just made an error there. Tom King was the mayor of Scarborough. He attended the banquet, and one of the other people there was a young Dutchman called Eric. Now, in real life, Eric was a musician, and Eric had left his guitar in the castle keep, and he went back to the keep to get his guitar. And whilst he was there, he just looked up, and he saw a man in very fine medieval costume pass by 3 windows consecutively. Now, Eric presumed it was one of the people at the banquet, and when he got back to the other people, he described the man that he had seen. And everybody was amazed because he described Richard III perfectly, and apparently he had no prior idea of what Richard III really looked like. And what's more, when he actually pointed out the windows where he'd seen the figure, the people said to him that first of all, Eric, there's no floor there at the very top level of the castle keep. Secondly, there weren't even any steps going up there anymore. And basically, everybody who attended that banquet back in 1976 on the first day of October really believed that Richard III made that special appearance that evening to the banquet to celebrate the anniversary of his birth 524 years earlier. And even the mayor of Scarborough at the time, Tom King, and even Marie Belfitt, a local historian and writer who writes for the local newspaper, you know, they all really believe that Richard III made that appearance there. Although his apparition has never again been sighted at the castle, it was only on that one occasion. So if any of you do want to actually see his apparition, then I'm afraid you will have to apply in writing £4.10p an hour. Don't all apply at once.
That's the one we went to for the lunch.
If you'll all follow me now, I'm going to take you round to a building which at one time was the oldest public house in the town. I like your bag. What's he called? Right! This building here was a 3 Mariners Inn until the year 1905. Now the building was altered in the 17th century. You can see the decorative brickwork there on the side dated from that period. The doorway is 18th century. However, the pub dates back 700 years, from about the year 1300 AD. The wooden timber on the side there is original. 700 years old. Do you remember it being built, sir? We do. Now, it was traditionally a smuggler's inn, and before alteration work was full of secret passageways and cupboards where contraband would be hidden. And it's also believed that Robin Hood used to drink in there when he lived locally. Now, it was through that doorway that the corpses of the dead were taken, because the inn doubled as a mortuary. And obviously, with Scarborough being a coastal town, ships would be wrecked or would sink at sea, and dead bodies would be washed ashore, sometimes quite regularly. Many of those bodies had been at sea for long periods of time, perhaps half eaten by whales and sharks, dolphins and other creatures, perhaps missing an arm or a leg or an eye, and they would be really, really smelly. And in fact, they would absolutely stink, just like her. But those bodies taken in there and kept in there before being taken up to the churchyard on the hill for burial. Now, one of the top rooms in the building was haunted by a headless female. Now, she was seen so regularly in there, the room became known as the haunted room. Now, she was headless. Quite how she lost her head, nobody knows. But she was apparently the wife of a drowned fisherman. And apparently, if her apparition was seen in there, it meant disaster at sea. You should not set sail to sea. And many tales were told of foolish fisherfolk that saw the apparition of the headless woman, disregarded it, went to sea, and were drowned during storms. And in fact, above that doorway as well, there used to be a ship's figurehead known locally as Elvira. Now, I don't think we've got anybody called Elvira here this evening, although you look a bit like an Elvira. Yes, Elvira, the ship's figurehead, was above that doorway for many, many years, and apparently she had the ability in the middle of the night to leave that location and rap on fishermen's doors to warn them if a storm was brewing. So basically, if it was unsafe to go to sea, you could either see the apparition of the headless female in the haunted room, or you could have Elvira rapping on your door in the middle of the night. Now I will mention as well, this building used to be a museum, and a friend of mine has been up there into the haunted room where the headless female was seen, and apparently it was recorded the temperature in that room was colder than in any other room in that building. And apparently, if any of you read ghost stories, it is often recorded that haunted rooms are colder for no logical reason. Sometimes a particular building even has a cold spot, where just one particular location in an actual room is colder. But certainly that haunted room, which was painted white formerly, it was recorded was a lot colder. And there is one third fishy tale about this building. A number of years ago, a young lady stayed in there, and she reported that in the middle of the night, an invisible hand tried to rip the bedding off the bed in which she was sleeping. Now, nobody else has ever reported a story quite like that, but this young female was adamant that an invisible hand literally wrestled with the bedding on her bed. Now, when I actually heard that story myself, I was amazed. Because I don't know about any of you here, but I've actually woken up to find my duvet on my bedroom floor. And when I heard that tale, instantly I thought, perhaps the invisible hand has been to pay me a visit in the night as well. And I don't know about any of you here, have any of you woken up to find that your bedding has been on the bedroom floor in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
And was that when you were sleeping alone or not?
Yeah.
And what about the people up there hanging out of the window? Do any of you ever find your bedding on the bedroom floor in the morning? Sorry?
We've nailed it down at the floor.
We'll sleep across from
You've
there
nailed it to the
tonight.
floor. I would imagine you're from Australia,
That'll be right.
so you're not local.
No.
But you live here now?
No.
No.
We're going to spend a night across the road from there.
Really?
From where? So
Cheap, which is me, I think.
Yes. I'm sure you'd have a lot of fun in there with a headless female and an invisible hand. You do realise the town has the wrong name, you know. It should be called Scareborough.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
Yes. It's very scary.
Well, last night we were in Conway, and apparently that's got the most ghosts in Britain.
It hasn't.
It hasn't?
York is the most haunted city in Britain, more than 140. And you
Really?
should go to York, yes. The most beautiful city in the country.
Have a good night.
You do too. And watch out for invisible hands. You don't know where they can get. So, that's the 3 miners in. And I'm going to take you towards the old town and tell you all about the Vikings.
That pub was an area. No. Is it, ain't it? Yeah. They pay to cook.
Probably.
Can I actually be nosing and inquire who the baby belongs to? It's yours. And is the father with you?
Oh, poor baby.
Are you a milkman?
Postman.
Postman. Right. I would like you all to look up to the sky and tell me what you see. And if there are any seagulls flying overhead, keep your mouths tightly shut. You might get a little bit more than what you bargained for. Right. Someone said nothing. Does anybody see anything at all? Stars. Who? Kylie Minogue, Madonna, Ronan Keating? George Clooney. You like George Clooney, do you?
Possibly, yeah.
Right. Possibly.
You like an older man.
Sorry?
You like an older man, but you've not met one older yet.
No. So nobody can see anything else. Right, I'll tell you all why in a few minutes. Now, I'll tell you all about the Vikings. Now, the Vikings were fierce pagan pirates from Scandinavia. And they invaded this coast over 1,000 years ago, raping and pillaging and plundering. And in the year 966, a group of Vikings landed in the South Bay here. The leader of those Vikings was a man called Thorgils, and he had a hare lip, and his nickname was Scarthy, which meant hare lip. And he founded a little settlement here named after him, and it was called Scareborough. Now, the Viking town was just down here, and the buildings were very, very small indeed. They were built of mud and sticks. They had no windows and were very, very dark and horrible, just like the houses in Scunthorpe. And in the winter time, the Vikings would sit around the fire and tell their old stories called sagas. And the Vikings were well known for their love of eating anything and everything. In fact, the Vikings were particularly fond of seagulls. Yes, they really enjoyed eating cormorants and puffins. And you, sir, have you ever had a puffin?
Yeah.
No?
Definitely not.
Would you like to have a puffin?
No,
Definitely not. And what are you laughing at? I only asked the gentleman if he fancied eating a seagull.
You didn't, you said a puffin. It's different.
A puffin is a seagull.
Puffin, it's a puffin. A seagull is a seagull.
Don't argue with it. Honestly, don't.
Well, all right. Now, I've lost my train of thought. Right, the Vikings used to worship their gods. And two of their main gods were Thor. Thor was the god of thunder. And many Viking warriors wore a battle hammer, or should I say a pendant, in the form of the Viking god battle hammer, to protect themselves during battle. And the other god, the chief god, was called Odin. And Odin had how many eyes?
I don't know.
You don't know?
2.
No, he had
6.
one. He had one.
Oh, God.
But Odin had 2 ravens who whispered secrets to him. Now, in the year 1066, exactly 100 years after the town was founded by the Vikings, it was destroyed. And it was destroyed by Harald Hardrada, the king of Norway. And Harald Hardrada invaded with 200 ships and 10,000 men. And he marched his 10,000 men up to the top of the hill. And what did he do with them?
Smash him back down again.
No, he didn't. That was the Grand Old Duke of York. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. What did Harald Hardrada do with his 10,000 men?
Left him there.
Pass. Gonna find a friend. Don't cry, Dor.
What about Percy?
No, it went raping and pillaging across the land and there's much damage as it did. Yeah?
That's some sort of United support. No, Harald Hardrada marched his 10,000 men up to the top of the hill, And there they gathered together lots of old driftwood. They built a great big pile of wood, set it as a light, and a bonfire was pushed down the hill onto the town of Scareborough, as it had become known. And nearly everybody living in the town at the time perished in the inferno. That was a Viking history of Scarborough, and the reason I asked you all a few minutes ago to look up to the sky was because it was during the Viking period that the very first ghost from the town was sighted. This ghost story is the second best known in the town, and this ghost has been sighted now regularly for 1,000 years. In the sky above the town, a phantom black horse galloping through the night sky. It does sound quite absurd really, but that apparition now has been sighted regularly for 1,000 years. So during the evening, if you all keep your eyes open, you may well see the phantom black horse of Scarborough, but let's just keep your fingers crossed that he hasn't got diarrhea. And I'm going to take you all into the heart of the old town. We're going to the old town. Let's hold my hand. I like your wig.
My reflex reaction was there to kick you in the knees, but I won't because it would be rude.
And what do you do for a living?
You don't know that, do you?
Oh, I
Kick
do.
people in shins.
Really?
Shop manager.
Shop manager? Of which shop? Pound stretcher?
Ham shop, actually. Are
Really?
they, steel toe capped, are they? Steel toe capped, are they?
Nope.
No. Interesting.
Yeah, then.
Right.
And where are you two from?
We live just outside Lichfield.
Just outside Lichfield? Yes, I can detect the Brummie accent now. Just outside Lichfield. With the cathedral with 3 spires.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
that's right, yeah.
So you're probably just outside Lichfield, somewhere like Rugeley.
Chase Terrace.
Where? So that's in English.
Chase Terrace, near Cannock.
Near Cannock.
Halfway between Lichfield and Cannock.
Really? Do you support Hensford Town Football Club?
No.
No. Have you been to Cannock Chase?
Yeah, yeah. it's
Both
just
of you?
up the road.
Have you chased you along Cannock
Yeah,
Chase?
both, and both together sometimes.
Really? Have you been to Sutton Coldfield?
Yeah.
Or Walsall?
We work in Walsall, actually, yeah.
You work in Walsall?
Yeah.
Well, somebody has to. Right. Definitely Lichfield. You didn't know that, did you? Even though you're a shop manager.
Yeah.
Right. Now I'm just going to move back to this story. I'll just wait till that car goes by.
We have to go to a place called Metafin in Walsall.
Where?
Metafin.
Yeah.
What do you know there?
But I don't like Google.
Right. Now my friend Mary lives in this building. Mary's a bit behind the time. She has no gas, no electricity, no sewage, sanitation or toilet. And she relies on chamber pots. And that's about 9:10 on the evening. That's about 9:10 on the evening when I stand out here and make lots of noise. Quite often the window will fly open and the contents of the chamber pot will come flying down onto anybody standing below. And that person's hair will end up really smelly and disgusting, absolutely horrible, just like hers.
She dies it.
You spent hours on that in a moment.
But you're all in luck today because Mary's out. But if any of you had been here 200 years ago, it was very common actually for the contents of chamber pots to be emptied out of the window onto anybody passing below. So aren't you all glad it's not 200 years ago? Yes, do you remember those days, Frank?
I do, mate, yeah.
You do. Yeah, so we'll point out as well the old town area here. The old town area here haunted by a phantom coach and horses. Well, I don't have any in-depth details, unfortunately. None of the eyewitnesses have stayed around long enough to actually, you know, make lots of notes, but certainly a phantom coach and horse is sighted in this area. And if you all look along there now, you could almost imagine seeing it coming along, because these buildings are Georgian, largely, and even the street lamps are very old. I believe they are Edwardian, so it sort of adds to the atmosphere. But we must continue onwards and upwards, and we're now heading up to the graveyard. Nothing like a graveyard in the middle of the night. The very time at which they were dying. We've only got one daughter that you know of.
Yeah, but no.
Yes. I bet you're all wishing you hadn't come on the tour now, aren't you?
Almost 3 quid that.
There's somewhere there you can all have a sit down. Who's unfit then?
Me.
And what's your name?
Dawn.
Dawn. Right. The stone projection on which you're all sat, Sharon and Darren and Tracy and Dawn, is known here as Coffin's Rest. And that stone projection was specially built there for resting coffins on before the final ascent up into the churchyard there. So over the centuries, not hundreds of dead bodies were rested here, but thousands and thousands and thousands. Just momentarily for a minute or two. Isn't that a nice thought for you all? You've all got your breath back. We're going to make the same ascent up into the churchyard.
How was it visible? Am I allowed to see in the 1800s then? No electric lights.
Where there's a will, there's
It's
a
been doing my
way.
head in. I had to ask.
Where there's a will, there's a way. Now, do any of you know when St. Mark's Eve is?
Same one.
Mark's Eve. April the 24th. And apparently at midnight on that date, the forms of anybody living in the town due to die in the next 12 months form a procession going through the doorway straight ahead there. And if you come up here on vigil at midnight on that date and you fall asleep, it too means that you will die. And in the year 1786, a local woman came up here on vigil. At midnight she saw form after form going through that doorway. Each form turned around as it went through the door, and she recognised many people as being her friends, neighbours and family. And the final form which went through the door turned around, and she recognised herself. And she collapsed out here in shock. She was found here the following morning by her neighbours. She told them what she'd seen, and she died shortly afterwards. So if any of you ever move to Scarborough, if you come to live here, and you want to know who in the town is due to die in the next 12 months, just come up here at midnight on April the 24th.
It's the last days, though, to the entire thing. Yeah.
Can I move a bit closer? I don't bite. Not this early anyway. Now here we have the grave of Anne Bronte. Anne was born in the village of Thornton, near Bradford, in January 1820. And when she was a small infant, her father became curate at Haworth. Now Anne wrote 2 novels. I'm sure our friend here will know what they are.
Emma. Not
Week
Wuthering
House.
Heights. It didn't write Wuthering Heights.
Is it?
Not Week House.
Anne wrote 2 novels. The first novel called Agnes Grey. For a while, Anne worked as a governess to a family called Robinson who lived in the village of Ousburn near York, and the family often holidayed here in Scarborough. And when Anne came with them, many of the adventures she had in the town had been incorporated into that first novel, Agnes Grey. A follow-up novel was called The Tenant of Wildfell Hall, dramatised on television 1 year ago. Upon publication in June 1848, it was condemned for being callous and brutal, but it sold well nevertheless. Now Anne's brother Branwell died in September 1848 of tuberculosis, and 3 months later her sister Emily died of tuberculosis, and Emily had refused all medical treatment. Shortly after Emily died, Anne was diagnosed with advanced tuberculosis in both her lungs, but Anne took no...
Right, and you know what to do?
Sam, mate.
You know what to do to get past it, yeah? Good. You gonna go for it?
Yeah.
You got 4 minutes to get to the bottom, Dawn, because that's all the tape I've got left.
I'll help her.
Ooh, very nice.
Okay, Helen. Good. 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 Okay, go left a bit more. Left a bit more. Stand up on the top if you can. On that top of that slope. Get to the top of the slope. And then you can relax then.
I think quality. I
Okay,
think
relax.
that's easy.
Take a breather. Think about what you're going to do next.
How can you relax when you're up there? I think if I got past that, I would do that easily.
Helen, you want your right hand in there where your left hand is. Your right hand.
Here.
Your right hand. See where your left one was then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Swap it with your right hand. Yeah. And then your right hand, there's another little... Right. Come away. Come away. Stand up straight. Okay, now look at what's happening. You've got... See where your fingers are now? Left hand. Your left hand.
Yeah, that's good.
Here's Lou.
We get it all on video.
No joke, he's going to look to use the camera.
Who did?
He's going Cheers, man. Do you want to photograph up with the
Who said not to?
your granddad?
No, my granddad said it's alright.
Oh, to be honest with you, the back here, you wouldn't have got a decent thing yet. Picture Luke outside her.
No, it's too hot, is it?
Missing Miggins. Right. Luke, give us a wave. Yeah, stand together, I'll do a picture. Stand together, put your arms around each other.
Mexican wave.
Come on, stand together, I'll do a photograph for you. Oh. Alright, my love. Say what, Dawn? What do you say? Oh, it's a nice bottom. There you are. Now I'll show you how this night looks work. Look at this. Right, come look at this. Come here.
Oh, come on.
Look. This. See? My dad's saying that. Can you see?
Hey, look at this.
Look at this, Dawn.
Look.
Look at it.
Night vision.
This is how the night vision works on here.
Very good, isn't it?
Is that what it is? Ooh.
Toilet.
Is that what it is?
There's toilet. Toilet, man.
Right. What? Yeah, I'll get another photograph of you here. Oh, there. Why were we going? Which isn't the right way?
No.
Come out the right way, Dawn. Yeah. The right way, Dawn. Dawn. The right way. Oh, promises, promises.
Oh, Dad's a muscle man.
What to say? What'd you say, Dawn?
Looking at your bum again.
That won't cover it up. Yeah, I'm with you.
We're going on the mile walk now.
No, ain't time.
Should be mountain if we do. All right, on to one mile walk. It's warm enough. It'll be lovely.
There you are, look. Video.
Yourself.
Yeah. Hey.
So I'm sorry you're never on it, eh?
That's better. So.
The wisteria over there.
There. Which is the wisteria.
Was the grand tour of my new house. Goodbye. The Jersey cows and oh, he's coming here, look. Hello, mate. I'm not showing the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello, cow. You're on candy camera. You'd make a nice beef dinner, wouldn't you? No, pure oil.
Ah, that's amazing.
Cooking oil. Straight from the cow's udder.
Right, yeah.
On this thing.
These are oil cows.
Stupid you are. Some oil cows?
Look at that one there, that cow. No, not that one. The other one. The other one. There you are, there's Emmerdale.
Oh, that's EastEnders, isn't it? EastEnders farm. Here we have Home Farm.
I like cow jelly.
And this one.
You are, where?
Oh, that's actually being around in celebrity theatre.
Dawn.
Why is it all black and white? There's black and yellow, black and green.
This here is a work of art, but it's also the smallest garden at the NEC.
Something like that. No, no.
You wait till they put a guy down. You think the phone wire in, you know?
It'll have to be calibre then. What's your red alpha? Alright, Dawn.
Yeah, there's little browsers. Take one of the browsers.
Luke, she's got one there.
Has it?
Good price. How much is it? £599.
You'd only buy one though, wouldn't you? You'd have to buy it again, so it'd be worth your money. It's going to like
£600 then more.
I know, I saw the bed. Like these.
Our lad's got to welded some handles on them at work.
So it does go nice. Solid. They did have, had it for a while. Winter, isn't it?
Now do that. Scratch my lens.
I'll scratch your lens.
Ooh, promising, promising.
A month.
Demonstrated in a semi-covered outside showcase. Potential purchasers of a garden, patio or driveway can understand
My God,
the extended dimensions.
that's just frightening, that is. Stand together, I'll take a photograph of you both.
Oh, yeah.
Not small.
Oh, look at that.
You use them in the winter, don't you?
I like that people there.
In the middle?
How do you get in there?
You have a step at the side. You can mount around it. feel like Dave. It's a wild garden, eh, basically?
I've got dandelions, I've no what?
Go on.
Let me get your sleeve up.
Oh, there. What'd you say? Thanks. Now you'll only go back under it. Put the jack back on.
Maybe put them on that side there.
Yeah, they're lovely.
Unless you're a
This is the smallest one. This is the smallest one. And how much is that? When you're using the skull, so one person can actually open it up and use it on its own instead of having to pull the cover out. So all in all, this is the 4-seater. And then we do the other spa, which is next door, which is fractionally bigger and it has a lounger in it. Works out a little bit more expensive. Or we do different building, depending on what you like. Is it something you've been looking at?
On and off, yeah. You would say, yeah, quite.
Is it more now on than off?
Don't know, really.
If it was something quite quickly, we actually have this one as an ex-demo. But this is to be taken quickly. It is brand new. All the accessories, same guarantees and everything else on it. But we like to get them off the showground. Even if it's not installed, we can drop it off and then come and install it at a later date. So we do quite a lot of show deals as well.
Come on then. Talk then.
Hello. A month. 1 month.
Yeah, I want rights.
Charlie.
Dad,
Dimwit.
Dad,
What?
you just hold that for me while I get my drink out.
Save the film a bit, my love. Right. 1 month.
Sven. I want to go and go next time. Hello. Who's that? Hello, is Tony there? Oh, it's alright, then he's going to come back there. Who's got there? Right. No, no, man, I'll try. Okay.
They'd have to do and then the back go over there.
Well, let's go over by the wall then.
Yeah.
Right?
This
the whole lot of this is 66.
They do all of that for 10. Come on. Come on.
you applied rather than leave.
Tough that, are you?
Them are nice, because they're
I can hear the land on that bit. Is that what? I do, when I did my drive out, I thought it was cool. Probably something annoying.
I'm just wandering around a bit. You're amazed to see us here. I was walking around